Slušate i gledate emisiju Inforatnici protiv novog svetskog poretka. Autor Miljan Glišić. Gost emisije Biljana Đorović.
Info Warriors against the New World Order. We have a very special guest today. It is Mr. Robert David Steele, former CIA spy, recently nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. We are very honored to have Mr. Robert David Steele on our program, and it is really time for the world to listen to this man. Good day to you, Mr. Steele.
Hello.
Hello. Mr. Robert David Steele is author of the 8 books on intelligence reform, 2 on electoral reform, multiple Kindle shorts, as well as articles, chapters, lectures, monographs, online posts, and testimony. He is the co-founder of the Information Warfare Conference, founder of the Open Source Solution Conference, invited lecturer worldwide on very broad topics of cyber, open source intelligence, reform, applied collective intelligence, inclusive of holistic analytics, true cost economics, and open source everything engineering. It is really very, very important to hear from him about many topics, and we are starting right now. Mr. Steele, you are the foremost American commentator on the deep state. Please, can you give us a brief description of the deep state?
I'd be glad to do that, but let me begin by saying that the best book on the deep state is the book by Peter Dale Scott, who is the foremost author on deep politics and the deep state. What I have done that he was not able to do is bring the deep state up into the alternative media conversation to the point that it's now slipping into the mainstream media. This is not something they want to have discussed. Most people make the mistake of thinking that the deep state is unelected bureaucrats and senior politicians. That's not correct. They are the best of the servant class. The deep state actually begins with the major banking families, including the Vatican, which is the world's wealthiest organization, wealthier than the Rothschilds. But the Vatican plus the Rothschilds, and then all of the central banks, the City of London, and Wall Street, that's the top of the deep state. And then they use the highest levels of the Freemasons and the highest levels of the Knights of Malta, who give up their national allegiance. They are no longer loyal to their countries. We've had cases where a CIA Knight of Malta and a KGB Knight of Malta collaborate against both their countries. Below them come the political parties. Most countries have been organized so that there are 2 major political parties that block 70% of the public from actual participation in the decision-making and the governance process. Here in the United States, we call it the 2-party tyranny. And then finally, below them, you have the secret intelligence services that more recently have begun to spy on and blackmail politicians and judges and celebrities in order to protect their power and increase their budget. And you have bureaucrats, particularly dual citizen bureaucrats, who pursue a Zionist agenda against the United States of America while having citizenship in both countries. The deep state is very real. And I believe that Donald Trump is in the process of taking it down, and I'd like to see Vladimir Putin and others do the same thing.
Yes, and in that light, how can President Trump, President Putin, and General Secretary Xi take down the deep state by working together as individuals and not trusting their bureaucracies?
That's a wonderful question. I would remind your viewers that Kennedy and Khrushchev were talking to each other through Kennedy's mother And they both agreed that the worst enemies to peace were the American generals and the Russian generals. And Kennedy and Khrushchev realized that as leaders of entire countries, they could trust one another more than they can trust their bureaucracies. I believe the same is true today between Donald Trump and President Putin and General Secretary Xi Jinping. I absolutely believe that these three men can agree that the deep state must be crushed, central banks must be nationalized, the Rothschilds must be banned from all countries, not just Russia and the Philippines. George Soros should be hunted down and brought to trial. There is every possibility here of these three statesmen earning the Nobel Peace Prize by agreeing to work together. Now, one thing that I have suggested to President Trump that needs to be done is the closure of all 1,000 U.S. military bases overseas, 44 of them surrounding Iran, and the ending of all U.S. financial support for dictators such as Saudi Arabia and Israel, which receives $30,000 for every man, woman, and child in Israel, which is then using that money to genocide the Palestinians and bribe members of the U.S. Congress. The 1,000 bases are being used to smuggle guns, gold, drugs, cash, and small children. The single best thing Donald Trump can do to put America first is to close our military bases overseas and no longer be the private army for Germany or Japan or Korea. North Korea is China's problem. It's not our problem. The Middle East is something that Iran and Turkey and Russia and the United States should be discussing and not allowing Israel to basically carry out their plan of balkanization and destabilization. Bottom line, these three men have the power to create a prosperous world at peace and put the deep state into an early grave.
And please, Mr. Steele, do you then think that American President Trump, Russian President Putin, and Chinese General Secretary Xi are not by any chance the part of the deep state?
That's a good question. No, I don't think that they're controlled by the deep state. I think Donald Trump, in fact, we're having a modest purge here in the United States that's going on right now. And Saudi Arabia just had a purge that was kind of an advance notice of what's going to happen in the United States. Donald Trump is much smarter than most people understand, and he has many very good people behind him, including Marines. I am a former Marine. In fact, I was a lieutenant with the current commandant of the Marine Corps, Neller. We are in the process of exploiting NSA databases, and we have identified all of the top pedophiles and their victims. We have identified all of the top traitors, all of the top money launderers and funders of terrorism. And we're in the process of basically arresting them or putting them on notice and taking other measures to close down the deep state. I believe that President Putin has already done something similar. Remember now, the United States waged a gold war against Russia. Buzzy Krongard and George Tenet under George Bush spent $250 billion trying to destroy the Russian economy. And Putin had to fight very hard to save his country from what was essentially multiple acts of war by the United States of America. With respect to China, I'm a huge believer in Confucianism. I think that General Secretary Xi, who's just consolidated his power for another term, is going to lead China into the future. There's no question but that the American century is over, the Chinese century has begun, and Russia is somewhere in between. I don't think they're puppets of the deep state. I think they are the three men on this planet who could destroy the deep state.
And you were recommended for the Nobel Peace Prize. Tell us why did it happen, and you can help Trump, Putin, and Xi earn the prize by implementing your ideas. And what do you think about the Nobel Prize? Isn't it highly politicized and hugely discredited?
Yes, let me start with your second question, and then I'll come back to the first. The terms of Alfred Nobel's will are very clear. The Nobel Peace Prize is supposed to be awarded to the individual, not to an organization, to the individual who has done the most to demilitarize the world, nothing else, in the past year, not over a lifetime. The terms of the will are very clear. Among the most outrageous awards of the Nobel Peace Prize are those to Henry Kissinger, who is a war criminal, Barack Obama, who is a head of a crime family, and this little girl in Pakistan who was a CIA covert action media influence operation. It's insane. When I was recommended for the Nobel Peace Prize, I was recommended by John Kalvik, the editor of Defense and Intelligence Norway, who believed that my ideas for holistic analytics, true cost economics, and open source everything engineering could lift up the 5 billion poor at 10% of the cost of the failed Western paradigm. And when he recommended me, his article is very critical of the Nobel Peace process. And I would like to say, I don't think I deserve the Nobel Peace Prize, although I'm glad to have been recommended. I think that Xi, Putin, and Trump together should earn the Nobel Peace Prize over the next 2 years by demilitarizing the world, by burying the deep state, and by using my ideas for open source everything engineering, which costs 10% of what Western engineering costs, 10%, to lift up the poor, first in their countries and then everywhere else. And by the way, what this does is it ends illegal immigration. It absolutely ends illegal immigration into Russia from China, into Europe from the Middle East, into Australia from Indonesia, and into the United States from everywhere.
And we have the situation that the new JFK documents were released, and according to newly declassified documents, an informant told the CIA that Adolf Hitler survived World War II and was living in with ex-Nazis in Argentina in the 1950s. Please give us your full detailed analysis of this case, because it is very important to understand it completely.
Well, let me say that that Hitler's survival has been documented, very carefully documented. There's a book on it, actually 2 books on it. There are multiple photographs of Hitler alive in Argentina with Eva Braun. And I have a post coming out. By the time this airs, the post should already be at phi-beta-iota.net if you look up Jeff Rense and Hitler, or just look up Hitler at phi-beta-iota.net. What happened was that Hitler's closest advisors actually drugged Hitler and Eva Braun. He was not willing to leave his bunker, but they drugged him. They took him to an airplane that was painted as if it were a Swedish cargo plane, and they flew him to Argentina, which had been prepared in Patagonia. An entire Bavarian community had been prepared for Hitler by his advanced thinking people. This was actually done with the full complicity of the United States government. The Nazis, the fascists, did not lose World War II. They basically emigrated to the United States and to Argentina. And in fact, the CIA and the National Aeronautics and Space Administration became the German agencies in the United States government. And NASA was actually run by a Nazi who was brought over to the United States. I forget his name. But the proof is all there. It's very important for people to understand that in the interest of the bankers who love war, the anti-communism meme was used in order to make the fascists our friends. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. So the United States not only rescued the fascists from losing World War II, their leadership and their wealth. We have reports, documented reports of multiple U.S. military cargo flights from Germany to Argentina where the pilots were not allowed to see who and what was loaded onto their airplanes. No question, but that this is truthful. Now, there's other stuff in the CIA papers that I think is not truthful. There are some false documents there that seem to suggest that Oswald was actually the guy that shot Kennedy. That's not true. I've reviewed many, many books on the assassination of Kennedy. He was assassinated by Allen Dulles with the complicity of Lyndon Baines Johnson and J. Edgar Hoover and many others. I think that the world will find that in the aftermath of World War II, the United States did more than anyone to resurrect fascism. For example, the book Gold Warriors tells about how we discovered the Japanese gold in the Philippines, and we turned that into the Black Lily Fund, which was a covert operations fund that was then used to restore fascism in Japan and Germany and Italy. We started creating terror groups in Italy and everywhere else in order to push the whole need for authoritarian fascist governments. So Hitler survived. That, in my view, is absolutely correct and true. And the book that it recommends at Amazon is not very well put together, but it contains, among other things, direct testimony from the people who survived with Hitler. Operation Paperclip was essentially the CIA rescue of most of the Nazi scientists. And that was the deal that was made. And if you look at that treaty, you'll find that President Eisenhower, President Clinton, President Obama, and I predict President Trump all have visited Argentina. There's a specific place where the Argentine German element resides to renew the treaty in person. And this is all laid out on this post that I've gone over. I think it's absolutely true. I think it's very, very important for people to understand that the banks thrive on war. War is good for the 1%. It is not good for the 99%. And the reason that Trump and Putin and Xi need to come together is because they need to bury the deep state, which is all about keeping fascism alive.
Okay, and we have really situation very interesting with the former Democratic National Committee chair, Donna Brazile. She, in her new book, Hacks, offers the proof that Clinton rigged the primary against Sanders. And there has been a lot of confusion about the significance of Brazile's allegations since her story was published. And please tell us, what is your opinion on this subject? And is this the end of the Clintons' era?
That's a very important question. Let me start by saying that I can understand Donna Brazile's fear because the Clintons have a track record of murdering anyone who disagrees with them. But she failed the United States of America just as Al Gore failed the United States of America when he was bribed by Warren Christopher with $100 million to accept the theft of the election that put George Bush and Dick Cheney into power. Donna Brazile's book is an attempt to rescue what's left of her miserable life. She betrayed America by being a co-conspirator with the rigging of the American election in the Democratic primaries. It is a documented fact that Hillary Clinton stole 13 primaries from Bernie Sanders. Stanford University has documented this fact. It is documented that Hillary Clinton manipulated and controlled everything at the same time that she was using the Clinton Foundation to sell uranium-1 to Russia, to fund the Christopher Steele dossier, and so forth. I actually wrote a letter, a certified letter to James Comey, pointing out to him that Hillary Clinton was at the intersection of treason, pedophilia, charity fraud, and election fraud. Comey did not answer. What is happening right now is that the two Podesta brothers, I believe, have already been arrested. Their passports were canceled. Donald Trump has been absolutely brilliant with Jeff Sessions in rolling up the pedophiles based on a tip that I gave him through the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. And so we have all the evidence from the NSA databases of all of this. That was evidence that was previously been concealed because NSA doesn't process everything. We now have it all. These people are toast. Now, I have recommended a truth and reconciliation approach. I believe it's more important to educate the public and the world about the crimes against humanity that not just the Clintons, but the Obamas and the Bushes as well have been, and the Cheneys, of course, have been responsible for. It is more important to educate the public than it is to hang a few traitors. So truth and recon for me is a very important concept that should also apply to the Rothschilds and George Soros and others, as long as there's complete and open testimony. Brazil is absolutely correct in what she's revealing today. But I have little respect for people who are courageous after the fact. She would have been much more valuable to us had she revealed all of this much earlier.
And what do you think, why did she reveal the documents? Is she, by any chance, a part of some new agenda within the Democratic Party?
Donna Brazil's life is over. She has nothing left. She betrayed every oath of integrity she ever took. She allowed Hillary Clinton to destroy the party. I actually agree with her. I think Joe Biden would have been a much better candidate, and he might have beaten Donald Trump. But America was ready for change. And you have to point out that it wasn't just Hillary Clinton. It was also Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was a co-conspirator with Hillary Clinton. He knew that she was stealing the primaries, and he collaborated with Hillary Clinton. He's now enjoying a new $600,000 beach house, okay? Bernie Sanders is a traitor to American democracy. And so you have to really clearly understand that every aspect of both the Democratic and the Republican Party is treason. Paul Ryan, Scott Walker, and Reince Priebus are American traitors. They are Donald Trump's worst enemy, much more an enemy of Donald Trump than the Democratic Party is. So the public needs to appreciate the fact that we need to get back to direct democracy, people, not parties. Mm-hmm. And I'm predicting now, I ran for president in 2012. I'm predicting now that 2018 and 2020 will be the year of the independent. 2018 and 2020 will be the year in which independents, Greens, and Libertarians are elected. They will create a swing vote in Congress, and that will allow for evidence-based governance. The era of the two-party tyranny in the United States of America is over, and pedophilia is what is going to end it.
And it is very important to understand what people simply refuse to acknowledge as the biggest problem, to understand what is going on with this most sinister satanic agenda, revealed the revelation of this situation through Hollywood pedophilia scandals and Catholic Church pedophilia scandals and the Ninth Circle satanic cult. And very few know that you are a commissioner for the International Tribunal for Natural Justice and its project on elite pedophilia. And you have written the foreword to a new book entitled Pedophilia and Empire, Satan, Sodomy, and the Deep State. And please, can you discuss the integrated nature of pedophilia, sodomy, and Satan in maintaining the deep state?
Yes, I'd be glad to. And I want to point out that Satanism is very much, and the occult is very much a part of this. Pedophilia and the occult and the murder of children, drinking their blood, harvesting their body organs, harvesting their bone marrow, this is all part of the 1% privilege. They think they can do this. And it's been known throughout history that drinking children's blood is an anti-aging device. Peter Thiel from Silicon Valley is on public record as saying that he gets transfusions of children's blood. What he doesn't say, which he may or may not know, is that when children are sodomized and terrorized, that adrenalizes their blood, and that makes their blood even more of an anti-aging factor. Think of the Chinese boiling dogs to terrorize the dogs as they die, and that changes the flavor of the meat. So what we have here with Pizzagate, which I want to give a salute to the Romanian taxi driver. God bless the Romanian taxi driver. He was able to get John Podesta to give up his emails. And that is what led to Pizzagate, which is a very, very important story, because Pizzagate opened people's minds to the fact that pedophilia was not some small thing hidden away with a few perverts. It's actually the central part of the deep state. It's how the deep state keeps its elites together, and it is also the Achilles heel of the deep state. And it runs from sexual abuse of children to the murder of children to the harvesting of their body parts and so forth, and of course to satanic and occult rituals. There are some people that believe that the reason we have 6 million children vanishing every day is because that's exactly the number needed to provide for one satanic ritual sacrifice of a child in every city around the world in these various satanic institutions, some of them affiliated with the Catholic or the Jewish religion. So I believe this is the single most important revelation of our time. And I think President Putin was absolutely correct to suspend adoptions by Americans. Not only were Americans adopting Russian children to put them into the pedophilia pipeline, but here in the United States of America, we have very stupid low-rent people who actually give birth to children that they do not register with birth certificates. They treat them as a cash crop, and they sell these undocumented children. That's why the Clinton Foundation was so eager to bring in Haitian children who were not registered, because in my judgment, they could then be killed without anybody missing them. All right? This is absolutely huge, and I really have to respect very much the International Tribunal for Natural Justice. I'm a commissioner. Cynthia McKinney is a commissioner. We're under a chief justice, and it's very important work that we're doing. But I'm also nurturing this book, Pedophilia and Empire, Satan, Sodomy, and the Deep State. All 10 chapters, plus my foreword so far, are free online and at Amazon Kindle. And as each new chapter comes out, it will be free online and at Amazon Kindle. Just look up Pedophilia and Empire. And this book is going to be the A to Z encyclopedia for pedophilia and Satanism. And the Catholic Church, as well as the Zionists, are very, very prominent in this pedophilia network. I think that it should be translated. The book should be translated into Russian and Chinese at a minimum.
Certainly, of course. And please tell us, have you personally done anything to help Donald Trump to take down the deep state, and particularly the pedophiles and Satanists, as well as the traitors scattered across the U.S. government?
I really like that question. Thank you very much. I've done 3 things to try to help Donald Trump. First, since July of 2015, I've been writing a Trump Revolution series at Amazon, which is easily translatable into Russian or any other language. I seek no money. I just want people to understand there's vastly more to the Trump Revolution than a guy that looks like a raccoon because he has an orange face with white eyes. Trump is much smarter and more dangerous than most people realize. The second thing I've done is written memorandums for the president that have outlined how he can use election reform and counterintelligence and grand strategy to basically destroy the deep state. But the single most important thing that I've done, which is now bearing fruit, is on the 26th of May, 2017, I drafted a letter together with my counterpart, William Binney. William Binney's the most honest former NSA officer. I'm the most honest former CIA officer, both of whom support Donald Trump and want to see our intelligence community restore its integrity and live under the rule of law. I wrote a memo with William Binney that went to Jeff Sessions, which told him how he could use the NSA databases to discover every email and cell phone call by every pedophile and every traitor and every major criminal in the United States of America. NSA has not been doing that because they have been focused on blackmailing politicians and doing insider trading. This one memorandum gave Donald Trump and Jeff Sessions the key to taking down the deep state. I may never get credit for it, but I do have a copy of the memorandum, and I'm very, very proud of having served my country in that one small way.
Thank you very much for everything you are doing, and it is, I think, very important for the peoples around the world to understand what the Balfour Declaration really meant, and what do you think of the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the Balfour Declaration?
The English are celebrating 100 years of shame, crimes against humanity, and atrocities beyond the pale. I really salute Jeffrey Coburn, I think his name is, the labor leader, for refusing to meet with Netanyahu. Not only is Netanyahu a war criminal, but we have to remember that Israel participated in the assassination of John F. Kennedy and the murder, the assault on the USS Liberty, as well as, of course, the genociding of Palestinians, war across the Middle East, and so forth. The Balfour Declaration was half of why Israel was created, and it was bought and paid for. The British officials who did that were bribed by the Zionists in Switzerland. Most people don't realize that Adolf Hitler agreed to allow all Jews to leave Germany alive for $3 million. Rabbi Lecter arranged this. And he went to Switzerland and he asked them for the $3 million. And they said, no, you don't understand. We want the lesser Jews to die as part of our justification for a homeland. Hitler had agreed to allow them to emigrate to anywhere. And the Zionists in Switzerland said, no, we don't want them emigrated anywhere except to the homeland. The homeland will not be available until after the war, so they must stay in Germany and die for the cause. This is the kind of history that everybody should understand. But it's not taught in part because the Zionists have created a very effective Holocaust myth. Most Jews in Germany died from Allied bombing, typhus, and starvation. Auschwitz has been forced to revise its numbers down from 6 million to 1.5 million, and it's been clearly established in a trial in Canada that the only gas that was used at Auschwitz was used to kill lice in clothing and bedding. Gas was not used on real people. I believe that there is a Zionist censorship and crowd-stalking machine that is active in every country. And tomorrow in the American Herald Tribune, there should come out an article that I have written. It's 9,000 words. It details my personal experience with Google Gestapo, which is the deep state Zionist censorship and crowd-stalking machine. It includes defamation campaigns, trolls, lies, false reports that lead to people being censored or shut down or banned. In my case, my nonprofit educational website has been declared a pornographic website. This has happened because a number of Zionists have reported my website as a pornographic website because it is very clearly seeking to put America first, not Israel first. And Kaspersky and others are lazy. They accept false reports rather than actually validate them. So the world needs to understand that there is this Zionist propaganda machine that is extraordinarily powerful, far more powerful than any Russian. I mean, RT is not even close to being serious as a global information service, but it's better than the U.S. mainstream media, which is, we call that the combination of the Crap News Network, the New York Crimes, and the Washington Compost. I hope all those words are properly translated. The world is rising up, and the Balfour Declaration for me is one that should be overturned by a two-state solution. I believe that the Turkish, the Ottoman Empire, and the Persian empires need to come back up. I believe that Russia is the new ombudsman in the Middle East, and the America needs to get out. And the recent Saudi purge, in my view, was a very positive sign that the younger generation of Saudi royalty, and I think the same is going to happen in Qatar, and the UAE is already well along. I believe the younger generation of leadership in the Middle East is now getting very close to ending its conflict with Iran, ending its obedience to Israel, and ending its tolerance of American military operations in the Middle East. And that's a good thing.
And finally, a question about false flag operations. You are on record as a former spy saying you managed a false flag for the CIA. And you are also on record as stating that you believe Dick Cheney personally managed 9/11. What can you tell us about the use of the false flag operations by the deep state, and why there have been so many in Europe and the USA recently, almost a week now?
That's a very, very important, deep question. I could talk for an hour about that, but I'll keep it to 5 minutes. Let's start with the fact that false flag means nothing more than not what it appears to be. The term false flag started in maritime warfare, when pirates and nations would fly the flag of their enemy so that they could get close enough to then do a surprise attack. So that's where the term false flag came from. Nobody died in my false flag, but I am a student of false flags, and I've written a number of publications on how to detect a false flag and how to determine that, in fact, nobody died or did something. I mean, the Israelis, for example, are really skilled at executing operations in France, for example, that they blame on Islamic terrorists, when in fact it's Jews killing Jews. These people have no integrity at all when it comes to killing their own, and neither do we at the highest levels. Lyndon Baines Johnson was giving the air targets to North Vietnam the day before we attacked, which is why John McCain was so easily shot down. The reason the deep state uses false flags is because it's losing control of the population. Dick Cheney is on record as saying that the biggest mistake he ever made was giving the internet to the public. The original plan was for the internet to be something that was very closely held by the military-industrial complex, and we, the little people, would not be allowed to use it. And by the grace of God, we got the internet. So false flag operations, and I have a Kindle Amazon short on false flags that is a tool of the deep state. And people can go to phi-beta-iota.net and just search for false flag, or search for 911, or search for Dick Cheney, and they'll get, 20,000 posts on this stuff. False flags are used to create a climate of fear, which then allows for budgets to be increased in the domestic police arena. The deep state, the 1% elite, is very, very aware that the pitchforks and the torches are starting to come out. And not only that, we have 3 to 4 million veterans, maybe more, who are very, very angry and know how to take down Lear jets with 50 caliber bullets. The deep state, the 1%, knows that if this pedophilia thing blows up, or if there are 1 or 2 other revelations where it becomes crystal clear that the Iraq War was based on 925 lies and so forth, that people are going to literally burn down mansions and assassinate families. We are this close to revolution, and I have a new paper coming out on revolution in the USA today. We now satisfy every precondition of revolution across the political, legal, socioeconomic, ideal, cultural, techno-demographic, and natural geographic domain. Every single precondition for revolution exists in the United Kingdom and the United States today, and in many of the countries in Europe. So false flags are a form of advanced theater that do include dead people. Las Vegas was a hybrid false flag. It was a legitimate operation with a massacre, I believe, funded by the Zionists in order to punish Trump and create more money for Chertoff and Adelson and others offering security services. False flags are how the deep state deceives the public, and the public should understand that the mainstream media is complicit. They know these are false flags, but they repeat the false narrative. And that's why Google Gestapo is so busy trying to shut down alternative media, because we are basically revealing the lies that are being told to us every single day. I would love to see Baidu in China and Yandex in Russia get together with WikiLeaks and create a post-Google internet. We absolutely need a blockchain information system that cannot be censored or manipulated. And I think the Trump channel is one way to get there.
And you are working with McAfee about the creation of the internet that will be independent from the Google Gestapo.
Well, John McAfee and I have met 5 or 6 times. He is under attack. There are a number of people trying to kill him. But he is one of the greatest minds in our century, along with William Binney and Julian Assange. And I'm trying to put some pieces together. What I have not found yet is a country that is willing to adopt my ideas and create an open source agency that has the Open Source Information Bureau and the Open Source Engineering Bureau. I'd certainly be happy to build this in Istanbul or in Nice, France, or in Barcelona, Spain, or wherever. Bottom line is I'm hoping Trump will adopt these ideas and then have a matching Chinese, Russian, Turkish, and Iranian open source agency, and then one in South America, one in Africa, and one in Singapore, as well as perhaps one in Kabul. I think that it's very, very important that people understand that the Western economic paradigm and the Western political paradigm is a fascist paradigm that is 50% waste and 90% profit for the banks. We need a new paradigm. The Russian foreign minister has said this. We need a post-Western economic paradigm. He didn't go far enough. We need a post-Western economic, information, and engineering paradigm, and that's where my ideas can be of service, not only to my own country, the United States, but to China and Russia. And I would like to see those three leaders come together and earn the Nobel Peace Prize together.
Yes, and is there anything else you want to emphasize from the JFK documents that have been declassified recently?
Well, I personally think it was a mistake on the part of Donald Trump to allow the CIA to withhold any documents. You know, CIA was created by Wall Street in order to be its secret center in the United States. And David Talbot has written a wonderful book called The Devil's Chessboard, a very important book. I don't think Donald Trump should tolerate any resistance from CIA. Had I been president, I would have cut CIA's budget that day. It's turned off the money until they released every single document. And I also tell people they need to be very cautious because the documents that CIA is releasing, I would speculate that 10 to 20% of them are falsified documents intended to confuse and mislead.
And I hope and I'm sure that our viewers will think about inviting you to visit them and lecture directly. And what can you tell us, where can our viewers learn more about your work and how to contact you?
Oh, well, thank you for asking that question. I would love to do more travel, but it has to be business class. I'm too old and large to fit in economy anymore. I would love to travel, and anybody can find me at robertdavidsteele.com, or they can just search for my name, robertdavidsteele.com, S-T-E-E-L-E. And at that website, there is a contact page which has my email. I would be really pleased to be invited to pass through Serbia and Moscow and Beijing, because I believe that the center of gravity for the future is this axis between Beijing and Moscow, and Donald Trump has an opportunity to be part of that triangle of peace. I hope that he does it.
Are you familiar with the situation in the Balkans, and do you know the secret plans, globalist plans for this area?
The short answer is no, I'm not familiar with it. I don't know it. But I cannot stress any more the fact that Xi, Putin, and Trump need to agree that every single central bank in the world needs to be nationalized. I'm just back from Thailand, where I shot a documentary with Steven Seagal, who has Serbian ancestry. We shot a documentary on pedophilia, and the Thai government found out I was there, and I was treated like royalty on my 2 days off, and I met with former prime ministers and generals and so forth. ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, is discussing whether every single central bank in ASEAN should be nationalized. I believe the answer is yes. This is a conversation that Xi, Putin, and Trump need to have.
Certainly. Mr. Steele, is there anything you want to add to this interview I did not ask you?
Hi, Mom.
Okay, thank you very much.
That was a joke.
Yeah.
All right. So was this good enough for you?
I think it is brilliant.
Okay.
I
All
would
right.
like you to come to Serbia and
Let me tell
to
you
be our
what.
guest.
Let me tell you what usually works. What usually works is the government pays for a business class ticket. A major university sponsors my housing, and I do workshops and lectures at the university. And a telecommunications company or one of your local billionaires gives me $10,000 to $25,000, and I spend a week, not as a tourist, but every single day meeting with different groups or two or three different groups. And that's how a package is put together. And somewhere in there, I have a private session with your intelligence community and tell them anything they want to know. I have no secrets.
it is open source.
Yes.
With no centralized authority to regulate them, cryptocurrencies are taking over the world and people are getting wealthy. 1776 is a new decentralized cryptocurrency, and we are giving away 10 free 1776 coins to 10 million people. With the goal of a larger blockchain than Bitcoin, when 1776 enters the exchanges, it could have a very large valuation. Claim your 10 free 1776 coins now. There is a limited supply.